In today's lecture we will study about the database connectivity. Actually we will take a MySQL database and then connect it with the help of PHP, and then we will access the database contents and do some operations on the database in the web page. So the main objectives of this tutorial is to let you be able to learn the database connectivity with the help of PHP application, and then selection and displaying data from the database in the web pages, then insertion of new records into the database, and also deletion of records in the database. The main purpose is to let you understand that how can we work with databases while we have a PHP application. So these are the contents. The first thing is prerequisites. What do we need for performing these things, or what do we need for developing a PHP web application? So when we start, we must also do some checks. So we will check the local host and also the PHP code, whether the PHP code is executing or not, and also whether the local host is working or not. Also we will check the MySQL server. So these things must be ensured, and after that we will connect a database in the code, and then perform the select statement and do some selection from the database and display that data on the web page. And after that we will execute insertion query on the database table, and at the end we will perform the deletion operation on the database tables. So in the prerequisites we need Apache server to be installed in our system. The best way is to install Xampp. Xampp is a complete package. You can get many things inside this Xampp. Once it is installed, you will get Apache server, MySQL server, also you can get FTP, etc. There are many things, and you can easily manage all these things. Xampp is freely available. You can get it from the internet. Just Google it and you will get the download link for Xampp. Then you need the code editor or IDEs. So there are various code editors available, and most of the code editors are freely available. So you can use Visual Code, Notepad++, Sublime Text, Dreamweaver, NetBeans, Eclipse, etc. It's up to you that which type of code editor you like. You can check these all on the internet. Before we start, first check the local host and MySQL server running or not, and then we will execute a sample PHP code to confirm the working condition of our system. So first, for localhost, I must check Xampp control panel. So here you can get the Apache server running. Suppose it is not running, then you can run it from here. You will find start button, so just click that start button and it will start running. In Xampp control panel, the MySQL server is giving error on my system. Actually I installed Workbench with the MySQL server earlier, so that's why that installation is not allowing Xampp to start MySQL, because the port is already blocked by that installation. So anyhow, I don't need this MySQL under Xampp. That is working well. Anyhow, if you have not installed Workbench, then you can use MySQL from here. So here I will check Workbench. Workbench, we can open our connections. The connections are working. We can check our connections here. I'm using this first connection and test connection. It's working. I can see all the databases here under my connection. So the local host and MySQL server both are running on my system. Now we will practice that sample code of PHP in Dreamweaver. You can use any type of text editor. In my system I have installed Dreamweaver for this purpose. So I'm going to Dreamweaver 2020. Now here I need to create a site for me. So manage sites and then new site. I'm giving a name to this site like lab work, and the files of this site will be stored on E drive, sorry, lab work. We will also create a server here. You can create it now or later, both are possible. So I'm saving it. It will ask me for servers later. Done. This lab work has been created. Now I need to create a file. So right click on this site and new file. Its name is test.php. This file has been created. Double click it. Now it asked me for the server. So to view the pages containing server side code, you need a testing server. So for that purpose we must add a server. You can also add this server in the previous step, like we did here, the site name and local site folder. So that time we could also create server. Now here under server, click this plus and give a name to this server. Let's say lab work, and it should be localhost. So for localhost I must type localhost here, and the folder for localhost with Xampp is, note this thing, for localhost we must browse to the location where the localhost has been installed. So inside localhost you will find htdocs. Select this folder for the localhost, and now this server has been created. Save it. Now here we have the code, and this one is for preview. So inside body I'm typing a sample code. Save it, Control S. The output appeared here. You can also check this in a browser. So here right click on test.php and open in browser. Select a browser. Open it here. Welcome. So it means that PHP is working on our system, the local host is running, and also we checked the workbench, it was also working. So we concluded that MySQL server is working too. Now let's try a loop. So here I'm typing for variable I equals to 0, I less than 10, and I plus plus, and here let's take number I. Save it, Control S. It's working. I think I should type BR for new line. We can also check it in the browser. It's working. It means that we can execute any type of PHP code here in the Dreamweaver. For database connectivity, we can use MySQL extension or PDO, PHP data objects. Both are possible. Before 2012, it was MySQL, but now it has been replaced with MySQL I. I is used for improved. So both can be used. It's upon you. And actually, MySQL is particularly used for the MySQL DBMS, while PDO can be used for 12 different database systems. If you have to switch your project to use another database, PDO makes the process easy because it has support for multiple databases. You only have to change the connection string and a few queries, while if you are using MySQL I, you will need to rewrite the entire codes including queries. Both are object oriented, but MySQL I also offers a procedural API. Both support prepared statements. Prepared statements are protected from SQL injection and are very important for web application security. The first one is MySQL I object oriented. In this we need an object to create the connection. So this object actually requires three things: the server name, username, and password. We can use three variables for giving these three values to the MySQL I object. So you can also type the values directly here and instead of using variables. Usually we work on localhost because the database and all the DBMS is on our system, so definitely we will use localhost for this purpose. Then the username, which we use to connect our databases, and the password, which was stored for these usernames. Usually we use root for connecting our MySQL server. Once you assign values to server name, username, and password, after that you need to create the object CONN connection. You can give any name to this object, so it must take these three values. The object has been created. After that we need to check the connection. So for that purpose we have an if statement. This statement will determine whether the connection has an error or it has been successfully created. Now here we have the code for database connectivity. First we need localhost and then the username. It is root in our case, and then the password. The password is 123456. So after that these three values will be supplied to CONN, the object, and with the help of if statement it would be checked that whether this object is working or not. So if there is no connect error, then we will get connected successfully. So we can save it. It's working, connected successfully. Now suppose here I type a wrong username, and now we will check what will happen. Control S. We got error due to this connection failed. So connection failed, access denied to root 1 at localhost. You can also use MySQLi procedural code to connect a database. This code is somehow similar to the previous code. There are some minor changes. The first one is that we used MySQLi class and used a new keyword to create the instance of this class. Here we are using MySQLi connect. It is a function and it also takes 3 parameters, and this function returns something to CONN. And inside the F statement we have also some minor changes. If you compare it with the previous code, you can use any of these 2 codes. Next is PDO. PDO can be used to connect different type of DBMS. Actually it has support for 12 different DBMS. So this code can be used to connect a database. Actually here we are connecting MySQL. We can also connect Microsoft SQL Server. For that purpose we must type SQL SRV here, and if we are going to connect MS Access, then we must type ODBC here to connect MS Access database. The rest of the things are same. We will have localhost for host, and also we must provide the database name here. In last case we didn't provide database name, then username and password. In last cases we used F statements to control or to check the errors or the exceptions, and here in this case we are using proper try and catch blocks for exception handling. So once we create this CONN, after that we work on the exception handling. So for that purpose we use the object operator. It is used in object scope to access methods and properties of an object. It is its meaning is to say that what is on the right of the operator is a member of the object instantiated into the variable on the left side of the operator. Instantiated is the key term here. This CONN allows us to access the main PDO object. Here we have 2 things. The first one is ATTR error mode, and the second one is error mode exception. So both are used for exception handling. The first one is used for error reporting, while the second one throws exception. Basically we are getting the PDO error mode attribute or control error reporting to raise a PDO exception that tells us what went wrong when it goes wrong. So with the help of this code we can connect our database with our application by using PHP, and in case there is an exception or error, then we will get connection failed plus a message of that error generated by that exception. Once the connection has been created, it must be closed. So if you are working with databases, then definitely you will create connections for databases, and once you operate or you perform all the operations on database, it might be a single database or multiple databases, so you must also close the connections at the bottom of the document or at the last of the web pages. So here for MySQLi we use this command to close a connection. For procedural, this was for object oriented. For procedural we have somehow similar code, and for PDO we put null in the connection object. Now here, for closing this connection, I must type the object. It was co so it is a variable. I must also use this dollar sign with it, and then the operator and close. So with the help of this code, the connection will be created, and it will give a message whether connection is failed or successful, and after that the connection will be closed. We store our data in the database tables, and to get that data we use select statements. So whenever we need to access data in the database through an application, we must also use the select statement. So beside the select statement, we need some additional statements also, so that we may get the data and formalize it properly. So in this code, we are going to select some data from the database. First we need to connect the database, so we will use the code for connection as we have studied this in previous slide. One thing is additional here in this mysqli. I'm giving one additional parameter, that is database name. Rest is similar, so it will either connect or will give error that the connection failed. After that we will type the select statement, which will give us some result, and that would be actually the displaying of contents of the table stored in the database. So here I am using 3 attributes. You can type any kind of select statement here. So here suppose we have 3 attributes, attribute 1, 2 and 3, and the name of table is table name here. And after that we will use result to get all the rows. Actually result is required. It specifies a result set identifier returned by mysqli query. Here we are using object oriented connection, so for this purpose we must use this type, and if we are using procedural, then we must type mysqli underscore query, and this SQL will be executed with this query, and the result rows will be given to this result array. After that we must check whether there is something in the result. So if there are more than 0 rows, means there are some records, so then this while loop will be executed, and if this query return nothing, then the rows would be 0 and we will get 0 results. Inside while loop we will get all the rows one by one, and here we will fetch the associative array. Fetch associative array, this is a function which fetches a result row as an associative array. Now here we have to display the contents, so I am giving a word, let's say ATT1. It can be anything according to the attribute name and according to our needs, and then the content of row 1 attribute 1 according to this attribute, and then again we will give something to display. It can be the name of second attribute, and here this attribute 2 would be the second attribute in row according to this attribute 2 in our SQL query, and similarly attribute 3 is here and it can be selected from the row, and all these are performed with the help of while loop. This BR is used to give a space, a new line to each row. Once we display all, after that we must also close the connection. We have a database here. Its name is student. It has some tables. It has a table basic info. We can check the contents of basic info here. So these are the rows in basic info. Now with the help of PHP we will display these contents there in a web page. So for that purpose we must type a code in Dreamweaver or any other tool. You can use Notepad++, NetBeans, etc. I'm using Dreamweaver. So here we have the code. First we need to create a connection. So for that purpose we need some variables. The server name, it is localhost, the username is root in our case, and this is the password which we are using, and the database name is student. You can look it here, its name is student, and the table which we will use is basic info. Inside basic info we have three attributes: registration, name, and father name. So here once the connection is established, after that we will use select query, and that will be stored in the SQL variable. So I'm giving a select query, select static from basic info. Now since we have three attributes, we can also type here static, or we can specify these three attributes: name, registration, and father name. These are three attributes in basic info. So what will happen, all the contents of basic info will be selected with the help of this select statement. Now after that we will execute this SQL with the help of this command, and all the results will be stored in the result. Actually this would be a form of associative array, and for each record there will be a row. Then we will check whether there is at least a single result. For that purpose we must use num rows greater than 0. Suppose there is no result, it is possible that the table is empty, or we have given this table name wrong. So in that case it would be 0. So for that situation we have this else case, and it will give us 0 results. Now as we know that the query is correct, and inside basic info we have some records, so definitely we will have some rows. So we will use while loop, and this while loop will give us the values of these three attributes, as we have mentioned these three attributes: row registration, row name, and row father name, along with some other words. Like for registration I will use registration, for name we have here name, and for f name we have father name. So this while loop will execute until we finish all the rows, and after that the database connection will be closed. So if we look at the result, we will get it like this: registration. For each iteration there is registration, name, and father name. So for each value of each attribute we have these three words. Now this is the first attributes value, then Amin Ali and Tariq. Similarly we have all these results from the table. Now we can arrange these values according to our requirements. We can also put these values in a tabular form. So for that purpose we need a table. Like here I'm going to insert a table. Since there are three values, so I need 3 columns and 2 rows. These are enough. So this table will actually give us a table having 3 columns and 2 rows. We can check it here. We will have this type of table. So what will we do? In the first row we will give this registration number, name, and father name, and this second row will be kept in the while loop, so it will be repeated, and for each iteration a new row will be automatically created. Now here I used the table inside the PHP script. So what I did, before displaying the results which were here inside the while loop, I displayed the first column of table after executing this query. So with the help of this echo, we can display the first row of the table. So here we have 3 columns: registration, name and father, and a single row. We can check it here. So this thing is displayed here first, and after that, inside the while loop, I used the same code, but I added the tags of table. So here inside while, the row is started and these 3 columns are added, and inside each column the values from this result are extracted, and once the single iteration is completed, the row has been closed. So in this way, we can create multiple rows of the table with the help of while. Once all the rows are completed, after that the table has been closed with these 2 tags, and after that the connection is closed. So we will get the result like this. Here we have a single row, and after that we have multiple rows. Actually, these rows came with the help of while loop, and in each iteration we got these 3 values from the database, and actually these values were stored in the result. So we got these values from the result array. We can also give a better shape to this table by changing its size and also changing its border size, and also make this registration name and father name as bold. So actually what will happen, we will get all these 3 bold, and there will be no border, and the size will be a bit bigger. So in this way the presentation of record will be much better. So what we did, we made these 3 as bold, we removed the border of table, and also we increased the size of this table. For insertion of data in the database table, we use the same procedure as we did in the selection of data. However, we have some minor differences. The first one is that the SQL query must be insert query. Like here we have insert into table name and some attributes and their values. After that, if you remember, in case of select, we used a while loop here to scan all the rows in the result, and here to check the status of this query, we apply this if statement. The query function with the connection object, or actually this is in the case of object-oriented connection, and if we have procedural connection, then we will use mysqli underscore query function. These functions are used to perform a query against a database. So any type of query must be executed through this query with the connection or mysqli query. For successful select, show, describe or explain queries, it will return a mysqli result object. For other successful queries, it will return true, and in case if there is failure, then it will return false. So here actually we will check the successfulness of this query, whether it is executed or not. So if it is successfully executed, then this condition must be true. So if this is true, then we can say that the record has been successfully added to the database. So we will get this message, and in case we get false due to any kind of reason, most probably due to error in this query. So in that case we will get error and the type of error along with the query. So after that we must close the connection. Now we will check this in our code. So here we used the insert statement for basic info. This is the table name in our database. Our database is student and it has 3 attributes: reg, name and fname, and these are the values for these 3 attributes. So this SQL will be executed with the help of this query, and with the help of this f we will get whether this has been executed or not. If it is executed, then it will have true and we will get this new record has been added successfully. Otherwise we will get the error message for this else. Note one thing, actually I'm working in Dreamweaver, and it must be a bit different during code, because now I'm checking the result here inside the Dreamweaver. So for that purpose I am closing this connection inside the f. Otherwise we need to close this connection at the bottom. So inside f I close this connection because this statement might be executed several times to avoid the execution of a statement. So we need this statement to be executed once, because if you are going to execute this statement again, then you will get error, because this primary key value will be repeated. So in that case we will get error. So for that purpose I'm using this connection close inside if and also inside else. So once we execute this code, we will get the record has been added successfully. Now you can check this record in the MySQL workbench. Here, wait a minute, let's save it first. Now, yes, actually this is repeated now, so I'm going to check CS0987 in our database here. CS0987, so this one is present here in the database. Note one thing about insertion, that when we insert data into the database, we usually use forms, and with the help of these forms we get the data from user and then insert that data into the database. So we need at least 2 pages. In first page we display the forms with a submit button. Once this button has been submitted, then the control is directed to another page where we apply this code, and there for values we use some variables, and that variables actually come from that forms text data. Next thing is deletion of data from the database. We use the same procedure as we used for insert. The only difference is the query. For delete, here we will use the delete statement. So if you are going to delete something from a table, you must type delete from table name, and you will give a condition like here we have attribute 1 is equal to value, and rest of the things are same. So we can change that code of insert into delete. So here if I type delete from basic info, and no need to type the attributes. Here we need where reg equals this record, and this statement will delete a record having reg equals to CS0987. We can also change this message. The record has been deleted successfully. So save it and now check it here. The record has been deleted successfully. Now if you go back to the workbench, you will not find that record. It's not present. In today's lecture, we studied about the database connectivity. Actually, we took a MySQL database and then connected it with the PHP code and accessed the contents of this database in our web page. We also performed some other operations on the database with the help of PHP code. The main thing in this tutorial was the usage of database in a web page, and for this purpose we created the database connection object, and this was actually the fundamental thing, and we created this object in the beginning of PHP code. Once this object was created, after that we were able to execute the SQL statements, and according to the SQL statements result, we processed the results. So we learned about the usage of select statement, insert and delete in the PHP. With the help of select, we got the result, the rows from a database table, and then we displayed that data in a web page. With the help of insert, we added a new row into the database table, and with the help of delete query, we deleted a record from the database. I hope you will do practice all these and do some work in the web pages using PHP code and do some modifications also. So for now, thank you. Allah Hafiz.